Hey, back for round two. I'm just going to go over a few more things I didn't touch on last night. So let's go to screen share. If I say it out loud, it works better, or it doesn't work. All right, so here we are back in Premiere, same project. So let's say you get done editing the video and you got to spit a video out. So let's say we want to chop the video. C for cut, V for arrow tool. I can then click and select that and then just hit delete on my keyboard. And then I can move this if I want to over here. And then I'll make sure I don't get actually real footage of a movie in there. C for cut again, and V to select it, and then delete. And so let's say this is a little clip that we want to render out. I hit up and down again to make the playhead move to begin and end of the clip. I'm going to hit I for in point, go to the end, hit the down arrow key, and hit O for out point. And then you go to File, and then you can do export. My computer is thinking. Export media. I prefer actually do Control M, which once you have your video selected, brings up this export window. Now here there are a ton of settings, and you can do H.264 formatting. This is where things get pretty crazy. We're just going to do H.264. We're not going to get into the presets too much right now. And I've made a couple of presets. Once I've kind of figured things out, I can actually share this file with you. I can take these settings, and I have a message preset, which is H.264. What you're going to want to be looking for though is your source and your output. So the source is here, 1080p, 1920 by 1080. P progressive, that's important. 29 frames per second, that's important. This little actually 1.0 is important. That's your pixel size, I think, or something like that. Anyways, that's important. And you want to make sure your output actually matches more or less, which is 1080p, 29 frames a second, 29 frames a second. Yeah, so they match. If you start seeing a P on one and an I interlaced on the other, we're going to change a few things. We're going to want to change a few things. So sometimes if you do get interlaced video, you're going to go to this part right here, where you can change your interlace, which is going to be upper or lower. If it's upper first, you don't want to say upper or lower. You want it to be progressive. You always want it to be progressive. And then usually it's simplest just to make your frame rate match. If you got to convert frame rates going from like 59 to 24, it can take longer to render. So if you can keep your original video and your rendered video as close as possible, it'll render faster. Encoding hardware, yeah, if that's an option, it'll use your GPU card to encode. Here is basically how much you want to render. Right now you can see that my file size down here is 64 megabytes, and I am going to be rendering at 19 megabytes, I think, 19 megabytes per second. Yeah, 19 megabytes per second, and that's what this is. So anything you want to keep it under usually 3 gig if you're rendering, or 2 gig if you're rendering. If the file size is for like 30 minutes of video, you should be under 4 gig. If you're doing like a quick video like this one, it shouldn't be huge. It should be definitely under a gig. This whole video is, I don't know, it's not long, but it shouldn't be too big. And this is where you're going to change that. So if you're doing like a 30-second clip and you see your file size is like pretty big, actually it's still not that bad. It's 166 megabytes. But if you're doing like a 5-minute clip and the file size is like 4 gig, you're going to knock this down. You definitely want it to be above 8, I'll say. And you can just click over here and hit 7. When I did message videos, I did 19 because that gave me about the biggest file size quality. That gave me higher quality without the file size being astronomically large or just a really big file size. Anything above 8 will generally be okay. After 8, you're starting, after about 8 megabytes per second, you're going to start pushing more quality over file size. So you might be like, well, I can do 16 and keep it under like 2 gig or 3 gig. But when you go up to like 19, you might be like, okay, now it's like 5 gig. So this is where you adjust your file size. You have virtual bit rate, 1 pass, or you can do 2 passes. What this does, your maximum target rate, this is not going to change your file size. I'm not really sure exactly what this does. I always put it at max. Doesn't change your file size. And what it's going to do is going to go through and render the video once, and then it'll go back and render it again and do a second pass. And what it does, it picks up and cleans up those pixelations that you'll see in the background as you render. So 1 pass is faster, and then 2 passes takes longer, but will give you a better video image quality output at the end, as will your target. As this will also give you better quality as well too, but also make it larger. The 2 pass does not make your file size larger, it just helps clean it up. 1 pass is faster. So if you're doing a rough edit, just do 1 pass, but once you start getting to your final edit, I would change that to a 2 pass. It will take longer. And then I'm going to change where I'm going to output this video file. Now, if your computer does have 2 hard drives, you're going to maybe want to do some testing. So on my computer, I have 2 hard drives. I have a terabyte drive, and then my local C drive, which is about 128 gig hard drive. It's not very large. And what I'll do though, I'll drop my footage on my terabyte drive and then you might want to write to your C drive. So what's happening is that as it's reading and rendering, it's going to be reading and rendering it's going to be reading all the footage and all your edits from one hard drive and then rendering it and then writing onto another hard drive. If you're reading from a hard drive and also writing to a hard drive as you're rendering, it can make it go slowly. Although on this computer, it used to work that way, and then I changed my terabyte to an SSD drive, and it doesn't seem to make much of a difference if I'm reading from a hard drive and rendering to a hard drive as much as it used to. But you might want to do like a quick test on a short video where you try reading from one hard drive, maybe your internal hard drive, and then writing maybe to an external hard drive you have attached to your computer. You can try it. Don't try it with a large file and see which one, see how it goes faster. So I'm going to select the place to render this to. And doesn't matter where we render it to. I'm going to render it to whatever file we are using. And if you really want to get clever and you have a Dropbox account, you can render the file to a Dropbox account that will automatically start uploading the file as it'll start uploading the file as soon as the render is done, which can be pretty convenient. So once the file is done rendering, it's in a file folder in Dropbox that then automatically starts syncing up, and then you can just share that Dropbox folder. So I'm just call this renders, and then I'll just label this 1, and I'm going to hit save. So it's saved. Now I'm not going to hit export. I get export, and it's going to start rendering inside Premiere. I'm actually going to queue it up. I hope this works. I haven't used this in a while. I'm going to hit queue, and it's going to export it to another program. Oh, please work. Yes, it's going to export it to a media encoder, which is a separate program and can make your workflow a lot faster. And when you download Premiere, Encoder comes with it as well. And it's called a dynamic link, meaning when you send it to Encoder, it's going to launch Encoder and then drop your project into Encoder. And here's Encoder. And Encoder is very similar to the last screen we looked at. See here, I can click on here, and I am going to be back into this window where I can then change all the settings. Hit OK. I can then also save it to wherever I want to save it. I already have it saved though. And then I can go click on this, and it actually brings up the same window to change your file settings. What Encoder allows you to do though, so let's say I have this one I want to edit, I can then minimize this, and I can go back here, and let's make this longer. And then I can go change my out point, and then hit Control M. It's going to bring up my most recent file save formats. Everything hasn't changed. I'm going to change this. I'm going to name this 2. It's in the same folder under renders. It brings the most recent folder up. I'm going to hit save. And then let's see, this file size has gotten 276 megabytes. I'm curious if I bump this up, how large that will get. It's almost a gig for a pretty short 2-minute. I can't tell how long it is. Doesn't matter. Knock this back down to 19 for right now. And then I can hit Q, and that will drop it into media encoder. So you can queue up a bunch of videos, edit, queue a video, edit, queue a video, edit, queue a video. And then once you're done, you just hit go, hit play, and it will start rendering your videos out. Same thing is too, I can then actually go back here and continue editing while the video renders to a degree. When I come over here and I hit play on a video, it'll pause the render over here. So it'll do this little back and forth. When you hit play on a video over here and you're editing over here, it'll pause over here. I usually don't like hitting render while I'm editing over here. I usually do all my edits first, then I send them to the render queue, and then I just render them all at one time. This will save you a ton of time if you have a lot of little videos to do or some videos to do. You can do all your edits, send it to your render queue, and then hit play on render, and it'll just render all your videos in a row. Now I can actually click on this, and I can right click, and I can reset status. And if I reset the status, I can then render it again if I want to. Or I can remove it, or I can duplicate it if you want to, because you might want to duplicate it and render one at a really high quality, one at a different quality, or you can change a lot of things. So you can load this up with a lot of different videos. I usually don't get to this point. I don't know if you can hear my computer has just gone into overdrive trying to render this footage out. And it'll drop it in that folder that we determined earlier. And you can go back to Premiere. Control S is your best friend, and it'll save the project. You can go back to Premiere, and then you can actually close out Premiere, which will free up some RAM for your computer again, and resources will help this render out even maybe a little more quickly. Again, this is nice because you have like a big project and it's going to take like an hour to render. You can kind of line up your videos. Maybe you have two really big videos, hit go, and it'll render each of them back to back, and you can go eat dinner. And you know your videos are rendering, just check in on it. I really wish they had a way to connect this to an app on your phone that would just ding you when the render was done. That would be, oh my gosh, that'd be awesome. And that's how you render a video out. Josh has really good settings. He'd be a really good one to get in touch with you about how to set this up because you can make or break a video depending on how you set up your output settings. The good thing is though, once you get it set up, you can just save your preset, and then it'll drop your presets. Here are all my presets. Message 10A, H.264 20 megabytes one pass, H.264 two pass 20 megabytes. So I have these already set up, and that's a copy. And then you can just go in and just drop in your preset. You have a ton of stuff over here. They do a pretty good job as far as your outputs. H.264 is usually where you'll probably live in this. That gives you the most options as far as like a capsule or a case to hold your video file in. H.265 is the next thing. My computer will not handle H.265. You can make a really high-end video quality. It looks great and keep your file size even smaller, and it does a lot of really good things, but the encoding my computer, it hates H.265. And so you have all those settings, and you actually come down here, you can actually see they have presets down here, YouTube, Vimeo, and some of these things do work really well. Is there an Instagram one on here yet? I don't see Instagram, but Facebook. And you can just match source. You can match match at a low bit rate, high bit rate. Sometimes these will work actually really well, depending on how you recorded your footage. You have all these settings down here. I usually use, like I said, H.264 is like all your Vimeo, YouTube's, Twitter's, all those social media accounts. So let's see if I go back and close this out. And so it's done rendering. I reset that one. You get a little checkbox. If something goes wrong, this will get mad at you. There's other stuff over here, presets for your encoder stuff. And so now it's done. And I can just minimize this, and that's a fast way and quick and easy way to render. Again, recap, you have out, so I can actually put the mouse here and hit O for out, and then I'll just render a bunch of black, space after the video, and I can do the same thing too, do a bunch of black space before the video, and I'll render all this black space, then the video, and then keep rendering black space. I can grab this too, make this shorter or longer, and again, that's shortcut keys, I for in, and then O for out, and then to bring up to spit it out, to export it, you're gonna hit Control M, and that will bring up your export settings. And then this might be something you want to talk to Josh about as far as getting the best output settings. I've talked to them a lot about this too. It's always kind of a little bit of a guessing game, trying to get the best video quality for something we're showing, depending on where we're showing it. So yeah, I think I'm gonna stop here and then get back to try and get it sent to you or sent out. All right, man. Thanks for your time. Can I remember how to stop